This is the Dvar Malchut for this week. One of the speeches that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave on consecutive Shabbatot. How was this? Shabbases. And this, of course, was right before the Rebbe had a stroke that rendered him mute, that he couldn't speak. It paralyzed half of his body. So these are very, very important, very potent words that the Rebbe left us with on bringing Moshiach. That's the whole point, is bringing the Moshiach. What we're supposed to do in order to bring Moshiach, and how this is expressed in every single detail. So sometimes the details are not pointing directly to the Moshiach. It's pointing to other aspects of life, other aspects of our personality, of Judaism. But that's in order to connect every aspect of our life, every aspect of Judaism to Moshiach. Because Moshiach is going to simply do something like what Moses did. He's going to reveal God to them, reveal big miracles to them, and try to get them to really believe and connect and serve God. And that's what Moshiach is going to do. Moshiach is going to get all of the Jewish people to believe and to perceive and to serve the creator of the universe. So here we see the Rebbe says this week's Torah portion called Kaltisa, this really contains in it in some way a generality, a general view of all of the Torah and of all creation. This week's Torah portion. Why? Because how did God make the creation? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning of creation, that's what we Jewish people believe, right? Scientists and whatever, they say, there's no beginning. There was no beginning. And if there was, it was a black hole or something. So there was a black hole. In other words, that was the beginning. So there was always something. There was spirit, there was something. And Judaism says no. There was one before 5,782, something like a half years, there was nothing. There was no black holes, there was no spirit, there was no being of no existence of any kind. There was no space, there was certainly no time, there was no vacuum. What was there? Pure godliness. We have no way of understanding what it is. We have no way of understanding what is God. But nevertheless, 5,000, whatever, 700 and this years ago, time began. That's when time began. Before that, there was no time. That's when time began. That's what Judaism says. They found dinosaurs that are older, and they found there's stars, and there's light years, and this. The Rebbe explains all that. It's not important. But suffice it to say that if we really believe that God created everything in one instant from nothing, but he schlepped it out for 7 days through the creation. But nevertheless, he created man from nothing. He created animals from nothing. When man was created, if a doctor would come and check him up 1 second after he was created, how old would he say? He said, this man is 20 years old. Right? This frog is, 3 days old, whatever it is. In other words, God created everything a certain age. So he created the universe also a certain age. And he put the beams of light, he created them a certain age. How does it work out? There's, of course, much more details, but not to go into the details and the truth, and I really don't know all the details. But everything can be explained. Anyway, according to Judaism, there was a beginning. Means that there was nothing, and then there was a beginning. And then there's the middle, that's the whole world. And then there's the end, which is the future redemption, the present redemption, and the raising of the dead, when this whole thing will be explained. It'll be understandable. Then God will be the main feature. Right? We'll see that the creation is an amazing miracle occurring every instant. And there won't be any question in our mind how God made everything from nothing, because God right now is making everything from nothing. We see it's not understandable. So there's the beginning and a middle and an end to everything. And so there is also in the Torah. The Torah starts off, and first of all, there's the Torah, and then there's the world, and then there's the finality of the world. That's Aleph, is Anochi, that's the Torah, was before the world. Beit which is Breshit, that's the whole world, and Gimel is the Geula, the future redemption. And it says the Rebbe, we can also see these things in our Torah portion. First of all, there's the first tablets. Then there's the sin of the golden calf and the breaking of the tablets. And then there are the third tablets. That's like Aleph, Beit, and Gimel. The first tablets, they are tremendously important. That's the Aleph, that's the Anochi of I am God, your God. That's the whole beginning. The world was created because of the Torah. That's what it says. Then that's step number one in our Torah portion. Then there's the sin of the golden calf. That brought all the Jewish people. That's like the letter Beit. That tumbled around the whole entire world. Then the world became the dominant thing. Something like that was also with the creation of the world. First there was God, and then there was the breaking of the vessels. What's called the breaking of the vessels. And that made the possibility for bad in the world. And then Adam ate from the tree, and then et cetera, until finally there was actual sin in the world. And we have to do all this work now in the world. So Aleph is the first tablets. That's like the Torah in its purity. Base is the Jewish people sinned. They disturbed the pure light of the Torah. And just like it was when God created the world. First of all, the world was very pure. And then all sorts of things happened. There was a tzimtzum, a creation, a contraction of God, and etc. Till there was made a world where God was hidden. And then there's the third step. That's the second tablets. The last tablets, that's like the third step, the Gimel. This is the elevation of the world after the Jews doing tshuva. We said this before. The rabbis said, we got up to here. Where do we get up to now? I think we got up to here. All right. The last words of the Torah is that Moses did these big miracles in front of the eyes of all the Jewish people. What is the big miracle he did? That he broke the tablets. Broke the first tablets. He saw the Jewish people worshiping the golden calf, and he broke the tablets. And God said, Yesha koach, very good that you broke them. How can it be? Because by means of the sin of the golden calf, there was added to the Jewish people the ability to make a comeback. Bali tshuva. This is above even the service of the tzaddikim. It says that where this place was a bal tshuva, even the tzaddikim can't stand. What's a bal tshuva? A bal tshuva is, for our purposes, someone who repents. What is a tzaddik? A tzaddik is a person who is pure. What's better, a person that repents or a person that's pure? He says, well, a person that's pure. I mean, obviously, that's a better thing. He says, yeah, but the person who's pure, he never really had to come from this essence of his soul to defeat himself. He didn't have to fight with the dragon and defeat it. He was always on this high holy level. Like you have, in the movies, you have the king of the country, and then you have, some guy, Robin Hood or whoever, he comes and saves the king. He's the lowly guy, and he fights against the bad people. So you make the movie, you make about the guy who comes and saves everybody. The hero. The king is not the hero. The king, he's the one that everybody's trying to save, and he's the one that everybody respects and everybody loves. But the hero of the whole business, right? The king never got in any trouble. The hero of the whole business, he is the one who fights the battles and he defeats the evil. Says that's like the Baal Tshuva. The Baal Tshuva is, if you want to call it the penitent, the person who says, okay, the repentance is sort of not the right word, because that implies that the person did sins and he did something, and then afterwards he decided to come close. No, in this case we're talking about a Baal Tshuva means a person that he was in darkness. He made a mistake. He wasn't in a pure situation, and he fought against the situation, fought against the darkness, fought against his ignorance, in order to come out of it. That's like the Baal Tshuva. That's the Baal Tshuva. Kach also, in regarding to the breaking of the tablets, the reason that this breaking of the tablets, that God said it was a good thing, Yeshakoach, because by means of that, this caused a new elevation in the Torah. That the second tablets in some ways were better than the first tablets. Like it says that God said to Moses, don't feel bad about breaking the first tablets, because in the first tablets, all you get is the 10 commandments. In the second tablets, I'm going to give you all these different laws and Midrash and Agada and Talmud. It says, Kiflayim Letoshia, doubled and redoubled energy. Like it says in the Gemara, if Ilmale Lochatu Yisrael, I'm going fast because we did this yesterday, but we did it also yesterday fast. So 2 fasts make one slow. If it was not for the fact that the Jews, Ilmale Lochatu Yisrael, if it was not for the fact that the Jews sinned, Lo nitan lehem ela chamisha chamshei Torah, they would only be given 5 books of Torah and the book of Joshua alone. That's what it says, Rov Chachma, Rov Kas, that there came a lot of more wisdom because they made God mad, so to speak. Because they sinned, so there was added to them more wisdom to the Jewish people. Okay, it's not coming and telling you that you should do sins because by means of this that you'll increase. There were fools in Judaism that thought that. There was a clown called Shabbatai Tzvi, and he declared himself to be the Messiah. And in fact, he had no other qualifications of Messiah whatsoever. I don't know. Nobody looked in the Rambam back then. The Rambam certainly existed, but nevertheless, they didn't. He didn't have any. But he was very charismatic. And one of the things he did is he took all these ideas from the Zohar and he twisted them around. So, especially this idea that darkness is, by transforming darkness to light, is that's higher than if there's just always light. So he said, okay, fellas, let's do sins. Let's do big sins. And I don't think he did murder, but any sin that felt good. So let's do sins, and then we'll make blessings. When we do the sin, we'll make a blessing, and that'll elevate it. So as could be expected, he had a lot of followers. He was a pretty, popular guy. It's like maybe the precedent of Reform Judaism. And he was a pretty popular fellow. He'd do whatever you want to, marry whoever you want to, whether this. So everyone was, liked him. But the fact of the matter is he was mistaken. He threw the whole thousands, tens of thousands of people into degradation. Okay. That says the Rebbe. So don't misunderstand this. We're talking about if it occurs that there is something bad, or God forbid you did bad things in your life. So that's the situation that exists now. Okay, you have to make the best of it. Making the best of it means that it could be even better than a person that was always holy and never did any mistakes. Namely, that now you can stop making mistakes, but even more, you can bust through the darkness. That's called an elevation of the second tablets. Because the second tablets, they were made by Moses, Pasal Lecha. They were not the handiwork of God like the first tablets. That's better. Why? Says the Rebbe, I'll tell you why. And the good thing about the first tablets was that this was Kefi Torah Nitna. This is how the Torah was given from above. This gave power that we can serve God below in the world. That's like the tzaddik, like the holy person, the holy Jew. The Torah was pure holiness. The Torah is like the letter Aleph, and that gives power to serve God below with like the base and the gimel. Base is the world, we said. Gimel is to bring the redemption. And simply that what it means that the Aleph, that's like the first tablets, is the first of all the letters. And this brings you to the rest of it. If you just have an Aleph, you can't use an alphabet, it's nothing. But it's the beginning. And this brings to the Beit and the Gimel. Because the Aleph on its own, but namely the revelation from above, if there was just the first tablets, just the Aleph alone, it's incomparable. You can't use it. You can't use the letter Aleph as pure as it is, as pristine as it is, but it can't be used. You can't utilize it. You have to have other letters to use it with. Namely the Beit, the Breshit. Therefore, in order to make this Aleph, this pure tablets, the beginning of the Hebrew alphabet, pure godliness brought down, in order to make it, workable, it has to be broken. Because regarding the creation, the creation is not prepared for such highness. And therefore, in the beginning of the Torah does not begin, the first letter of the Torah is Beit, not Aleph. Aleph is the first letter of the Ten Commandments, but the Ten Commandments that was given a long time after the Beit, the world was created. Right? The Ten Commandments was given, the 2,448 years after the world was created. Because why did God give the Torah? So that it should come into the world. That's why God got so angry at the Jews when they didn't want to go into the land of Israel. They wanted to stay in the desert where everything was pure. They were receiving bread and water and protection from God. They could sit and learn the Torah all the time. And God did not like that. He got very angry because the Torah has to be brought into the world. Shachanot lazeh, that the preparation for bringing the Torah into the world, this is by serving God in the Chav Vav Dorot, in the 26 generations from the giving of the Torah until from the creation of the world until the giving of the Torah. There were 26 generations backwards from that preceded the giving of the Torah. Which is not the case. The last tablets, Shaboim al Yedei Avodas Adam. So again, let's say the world was prepared by the 26 generations before the Torah. But when the Torah was given, nevertheless, the world was still not ready for the Torah. That's why it says that in Mount Sinai, when God spoke, that the souls of the Jews jumped out of their bodies. It was simply too much. Despite the 26 generations that prepared the world for the giving of the Torah, nevertheless, the world was still not ready for the Torah. The Torah was too pure. Which is not the case by means of the second tablets that came by means of tshuva, repentance. What happens? The Jewish people sinned with the golden calf, and then the Jewish people repented. They returned to God. They realized their mistake. Then there was the second tablets. And these second tablets, they were made by Moses. This mamali b'tachlit kavana, this is the whole reason why God created the world. The first tablets were pure godliness. It was too much. It was pure, but that's not why God created the world. It's like parents that have a child and they pamper him. They pamper him all the time, that he never has any challenges in life, he never has any difficulties, and he never has to walk on the street on his own, and he never has to see any disappointments, nothing whatsoever. And his teachers are always praising him. And in fact, he is a big genius, and he really understands. Good, but he's not a human being. But he can't stand people. The whole purpose of the world is to get along with, and to get along and to fix up the world. That's why God created the world. Not to be that we should ignore it and get rid of it and to get out of it as soon as possible. That's the Eastern religions. And for a certain degree, it's all the religions. The world is bad. Judaism says, no, the world is very good, but it's very good only potentially. Actually, it's terrible. You have to go through the world, fix how to fix up the world. The world can bring you to do these terrible sins, even the golden calf. But the idea is to reveal godliness in the world and with the world. That in the world should be revealed how the world is for the Torah. Therefore, by means of breaking the tablets, the sin and the breaking of the tablets, this caused an elevation in the Torah. In the second tablets, the second tablets were never broken. The second tablets, that was what was in the Holy Temple. Adarab, exactly the opposite. The Torah was added on. It says, Kiflayim l'toshia. It was doubled and redoubled power. The Ofen Shah Torah, in the way that the Torah remains whole below in this physical world, but it's forever, eternal, for all time. Until Shazem, maybe this brings to the third level, which we said is Gimel. So in other words, the Aleph, Beit, Gimel, 1, 2, 3. Number 1 is the first tablets, totally pure. Beit The intermediary state is the sin of the golden calf, the breaking of the tablets, and finally the second tablets. The second tablets, that's the Gimel. But ideally, what this is going to bring to the Geula, the true redemption of the whole world. That God will be revealed in every detail in the world, and every potential will be revealed. Sha'az, then titgaleh b'shleimus, then it will be revealed in a complete way. Malat tshuva, and the whole highness of the repentance, the return of the Jewish people because of their sin of the golden calf. Malat luchot achronot. This is the highness of the second tablets that came by means of the breaking of the first tablets. Hamal Shabo, this comes by means of the service of man below, and especially by means of tshuva, returning to God. Come back. Lamalot tachlit abriya, this is to fill the whole purpose of why God created the world for the sake of the Torah. Okay, so what's the Rebbe saying again? We have to, again, get the proper perspective of what's happening. Judaism is not just one little area of the world. It's not just one little, group and religion of people that they're doing their thing, right? Everybody has their thing. The Jews have their thing. Not so. The Jews are doing everyone's thing. The Jews are here to fix up the entire world, from the tip of Africa to the top of whatever is Antarctica, right? And everything that's in between. That's the purpose of the Jewish people, is to put meaning, blessing, holiness into the whole world. That the whole world should be healthy. But in order to do this, we have to be in the world. And that takes step 1, 2, and 3. 1 is total purity. Base is the world that has to be fixed up. And Gimel is the final fixing up. Nimsa, so it comes out that in this week's Torah portion, Kitisa, we find all of these 3 things: the beginning, the middle, and the end. The Aleph, it talks about the beginning of the Torah, the first tablets. A Beit, which is talking about the creation of the world, the sin of the golden calf, the world. And the Gimel is the finishing of the Torah, like it says, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, how Moses was the end of the Torah, where Moses did this amazing miracle, namely Yeshua Sheshabarta, that he broke the tablets, and that made for the future redemption, that we can now use the Torah in the world. And all of these 3 things in Parshas Kitisa, they come in one continuation, one line. At first glance, we can ask, how can it be that all these 3 things are in one continuation? How can you equate the first tablets, which were given from above, to the sin and the breaking of the tablets, which come by means of the sin that we did? That even though it did bring to an elevation, but nevertheless is a terrible thing. Well, how can it come one right after the other? It doesn't make any sense. It's like talking about, in one, like having a book of health, a book of, for the university, talks about what is health. And it gives you a picture of the ideally healthy person, how the heart is supposed to work, how the lungs are supposed to work, how the this, right? And it gives you the example, the people that live over here in the Alps, they're totally healthy. They live longer, their eyes work and their ears work. And this is the ideal person. You can also find this over here, ideal person, right? And in the same chapter, doesn't even make a different chapter. In the next paragraph, right? And it says, and for an example, the least healthy person in the world, he's on the edge of death. His lungs don't work. His heart doesn't work. His liver doesn't work. His kidneys don't work. His arms don't work. His eyes don't work. His ears don't work. There's nothing, absolute, the worst health you can possibly have in the world, right? Health in the world. In the same sentence. What are you doing that for? I mean, that must be coming. What is it doing in this, in this health book, in the book of ideal, what a man is supposed to be, why put the worst person in the world next to the best? Do it little by little. Say, this is healthy. Then let's take aberrations that can occur in the heart. Sometimes this valve doesn't work. Sometimes this muscle doesn't work. Sometimes this fiber doesn't work. And little by little, right? No, the whole entire shot, from the best to the worst. How could it be? So that's what we have in our Torah portion. We have the best and the worst. The first tablets were pure, given purely from God. After God took the Jews out of Egypt, everything was working perfectly. After that came the worst situation you could possibly have. Everything was sick. The Jewish people worshiped the golden calf. They said, this is our God. What about the Torah? You just received the Torah. The Torah starts off, don't worship idols. Forget it, that we have a new interpretation, we have a new this. That's the worst it can possibly be. How can there be such a terrible thing? Right? It's almost like, bringing at Mount Sinai, bringing a big cross, bringing a big idol. God forbid, how do these two things work together? Right? The sin of the golden calf was idolatry, pure idolatry. You can't bring an idol to Mount Sinai. Make another chapter, right? How the Jewish people, no, it's written one right after the other, almost the same sentence. Says the Rebbe, I'll explain. These three things are the order that God made. That all of these things, everything is divided into three. Aleph, Beis, and Gimel. After the first, the Aleph, namely they receive the Torah, has to come the middle, Beit. And by means of that, Mitmalet, it comes, when this is completed, stage number 2, this brings to stage number 3. In other words, if you would just have stage number 1, they wouldn't be able to come to stage number 3. And Kamadubar, like we said before. Same thing with the creation of the world, right? God created the world was perfect, everything was ready, everything was good, Adam was in Gan Eden, he eats from the tree, he does the worst sin, he brings death into the world, the worst of the worst, everything was pure life, all of a sudden he brings death into the world. Right? The same thing. Why did it happen? In order that it should be fixed up in the world. That's the whole idea of the world. So God forbid, I want to just stress again, don't think it means that we should do sins in order to correct it. It means that we should be in a situation where there is such a thing, a potential as sin, and we have to make the decision to defy this. It's better to make that decision before you do the sin than after you do the sin. But nevertheless, that's what God wanted. He put Adam in Gan Eden. He gave the Jewish people the Torah and gave them the potential to do bad so that they would make the choice not to do bad. They would choose right. He didn't want man to make the wrong choice. But when it did happen, so that makes it even further down, and we have to have more power to get out of it. Says the Rebbe, in order to get to stage number 3, so it has to be stage number 2. So to speak, this is after the act, there had to be the sin of the golden calf. Because only by means of that could we have gotten to number 3. How does this work out? We're going to figure this out tomorrow. We're going to figure it out tomorrow, what it means. How it is that sin is a good thing, but God forbid we should certainly never do it. They don't know. My grandfather told my father that this is the previous Rebbe speaking, and his grandfather was the 4th Rebbe of Chabad. The previous Rebbe was the 6th Rebbe of Chabad. His grandfather, this is the Rebbe Marash, Rebbe Shmuel. He said that my father, the 3rd Rebbe of Chabad, he selected the Maimorim that are printed in Likuti Torah from 2,000 Maimorim. Likuti Torah is the continuation of this book that we're learning in the morning, Torah Or. And Likuti Torah has in it, I didn't really count, but it was something like 100 discourses. And he chose from 2,000 discourses of the first Rebbe of Chabad. And those, of course, were also brought down from tens of thousands that he said. But from 2,000, he chose these Maimorim that were said. So also the same thing with Torah Or. The Maimorim that we're learning in Torah Or, in the class that we learn in the morning, this was also weaned down. and just the how do you say, concentrated from thousands and thousands of Maimorim, that's the ones that we get, the really essential ideas in Chassidut and serving God, loving God, and fearing God and believing in God, and bringing Moshiach now. Have a good day. God willing, at 3:00, we'll learn about the golden calf and the breaking of the vessels, and with all the commentaries. Hope to see you. Have a good day with Moshiach now.